My husband caught me in the act with another man, and that caused a big reaction. Now he's serving a 5-year jail sentence, and my whole family is angry with me. I've destroyed what used to be a perfect family. I can't help but feel like a selfish person, and I keep telling myself that every night when I'm alone in my silent home. My children are not living with me, and my ex-husband has good reasons to hate me. My immediate family is divided, and I can't stop hating myself for my actions back in 2015. I recently turned 39, and have to admit that I took my ex-husband for granted. My ex always told me I was beautiful, wanted to be close, took care of me, and treated me as an equal, not like a queen or princess. We were high school sweethearts and each other's one and only, and it felt right. My family loved him, especially my brother who looked up to him. My ex was a good man and always helped people in trouble. We were married for 20 years by then and had 2 headstrong boys together. At that time, our daughters were in their teenage years, and I gained weight, which made me feel self-conscious. However, my ex-husband still thought I was beautiful and we rarely argued, but when we did, it usually revolved around closeness and my unwillingness to try certain things in bed, even though I wanted to. I just wasn't feeling it, and he got that. When I turned 39, my birthday party was all about showing off the new me. I had been hitting the gym doing yoga and Pilates all year long. I worked hard and went from weighing 180 pounds to a fantastic 135 pounds. It was a total transformation for me. I used to be a bit on the chubby side, so having a tight and fit body was totally new and exciting. My ex-husband also joined me at the gym, but he wasn't as dedicated as I was. He managed to drop from 260 to 225 pounds and started shaping up too. He couldn't keep his hands off me, but for some reason, I just wasn't in the mood for closeness. It's not like he didn't try, though. We went on dates, danced together, and took regular walks. He was helpful around the house, and I could tell he still loved and desired me after 20 years together. Any woman would be thrilled to have that kind of attention, but mentally, I wasn't feeling it at that time. I thought maybe I was going through early menopause because we only had closeness a couple of times a month, and once I was satisfied, I was done. But he wanted more, and no matter how hard he tried, I just wasn't interested. So, my ex-husband suggested couple counseling, but I turned it down, showing my selfishness. Soon after my birthday, a younger and attractive new manager joined my office, and he seemed interested in me for some reason. At first, I ignored him, but then we started chatting casually. Eventually, he started flirting, but I showed him my wedding ring. However, after 2 months of continuous flirting, I started flirting back, sharing details about my life, and couldn't stop thinking about him. Looking back, I realize it was an emotional affair, but at that time, I was caught up in the excitement. My ex-husband sensed that something was off with me, and we had a heated argument about it, which I believe I started. During the argument, he tried to kiss me, but I unconsciously looked disgusted because I was thinking about the other man. A week later, I met the new manager at a cafe, planning to tell him to back off and end things. But before I could say anything, he kissed me, and my mind went blank. That marked the start of our 6-month affair, during which I did things with him that my ex-husband had wanted from me. I was much more excited and willing to be close with someone else. It felt like the newness of the situation made me always want to be in the mood. Even though my ex and I still had closeness, it wasn't as frequent. I started pushing him away and finding fault with small things, and I even treated him poorly. Looking back, I'm ashamed of how I acted during that time. It wasn't until my brother visited me and revealed that my ex had confided in him about feeling depressed and considering separation because he thought I didn't love him anymore. That woke me up, and I realized I needed to change. I immediately ended the affair, quit my job, and decided to make my husband feel loved and wanted again. I was determined to be a better wife. Then, my affair partner came to my house with a box of things from my office, and we talked. He wanted to know what he did wrong, but I told him I needed to fix my marriage. I asked him to leave, but he insisted on one last time together, and foolishly, I agreed. We ended up in the bedroom together. I'm not sure how long we were doing it, but when he was on top of me, something suddenly pulled him back aggressively, and there was a loud bang. I sat up and saw my ex looking at me, while my affair partner was on the floor with a hole in the wall. I tried to talk to my ex, but his eyes were red and teary, and his lips were trembling with pain. It made me feel disgusted. My affair partner tried to leave, but my ex warned him to stay back. Then my ex attacked him, and I screamed and cried, begging my ex to stop. I got desperate and jumped on my ex's back, but it only resulted in me getting slammed to the floor. Everything got blurry for a moment, and words sounded muffled. When I came to, my ex had my affair partner on his side, and was on the phone. I couldn't do anything but stare at my affair partner's swollen face and the blood and teeth on the floor. Then there was a loud bang on the door, and my ex put the phone on speaker, slowly got on his knees, and put his hands on the back of his head. The door swung open, and the police barged in, handcuffing him while paramedics rushed in shortly after. I later found out he had called 911 on himself. Things went downhill fast at the hospital. My father didn't say a word, just looked at me with shame. My brother was furious, crushed, asking how I could do that to my ex. Mom tried to console me, but Dad snapped at her. His family was livid, and his sisters threatened me while his parents seemed ready to bury me alive. When I tried talking to my children, they refused to even acknowledge me. My sons couldn't bear to look at me. My affair partner was seriously hurt and needed reconstructive surgery for his face, thanks to my ex's rage. While at the hospital, a woman attacked me, and my brother had to pull her away. Turned out, she was my affair partner's wife, and I had no idea he was married. He never wore a ring or mentioned it, which made me feel even worse. As the trial approached, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my husband's side, and my girls wouldn't talk to me. My ex didn't want to see me either. I tried to visit him at the county jail, but they wouldn't let me in. So my brother made sure my ex was transferred to the correctional facility where he worked, keeping an eye on him. When I asked my brother to pass on a message for me during the trial, he lashed out and told me to go to hell. It had been 3 months since I last saw him, and the anger in his eyes hurt more than anything I could have imagined. He had always looked at me with love, even when we were mad at each other, but during the trial, it was pure hatred. I had to excuse myself and cry in the restroom. As the days passed, I had to painfully recount every detail of my affair for everyone to hear. When I mentioned how long it had been going on, my ex looked crushed, and my father couldn't bear it, so he walked out of the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I learned that he had planned a surprise lunch and a romantic weekend getaway for us to the Catskills. But instead, he walked in on us, and his reaction was fierce. The affair partner told him to step aside, and my ex couldn't control his anger, resulting in him beating the affair partner until he stopped and pushed me away. He immediately called 911, and we heard the recording in court. Hearing the pain in his voice, his sobs as he followed the operator's instructions, crushed my soul. The affair partner couldn't testify verbally due to heavy medication, so they used images of his injuries, and it made me sick to my stomach, knowing I was responsible for all of this. My ex severely injured his eye socket, cheekbones, and jaw. The doctors said there were small bone fragments that couldn't be put back together. He got charged with a third-degree felony and got a 7-year sentence. My sons protested loudly, and my daughters and his family let out a heartbreaking cry that still haunts me. The first 3 months were absolute torture. My soon-to-be ex-wife sued me for alienation of affection. My ex filed for divorce. My eldest moved out. One son stayed locked in his room, and my twins were rebelling big time. My former sister-in-law even attacked me at Price Chopper. When I tried to apologize to his mother, she spat in my face. My father and brother wouldn't even talk to me. I had to find a new job because there was no money coming in, and I almost depleted my savings. But I was pretty much blacklisted in my field due to the bad publicity from the affair. So, I ended up working in retail and as a seasonal H&R Block adjuster during the tax rush. Things got so tough that I almost lost the house. My ex refused any visitation from me, and he returned every letter I sent. I found myself crying in the shower almost every day. The situation strained my parents' relationship, as my mother constantly defended me. My brother completely ignored me, and even my friends from grade school were split over the situation. I started having thoughts of disappearing and leaving everything behind because the guilt was overwhelming. Eventually, I sought help from a therapist, and she scolded me, saying that I had gotten too comfortable with my ex. Instead of seeing him as a husband, I treated him like a friend with benefits. She was right. I took him for granted and saw him more as a companion than a spouse. But he saw me as his wife, the mother of his children, the woman he loved and desired. Almost a year passed, and my children didn't say a word to me. When I cooked dinner, they'd grab their food and retreat to their rooms without even looking at me. I had a few meltdowns begging them to talk to me, but it was useless. My brother got married, and I wasn't invited, although my kids were. I kept trying to visit my ex, hoping he'd put me on the visitor list, but I was always denied. My letters to him kept coming back, and it made me feel deeply depressed. I knew I deserved it. Then, out of the blue, my brother showed up at my house. I was surprised and happy to see him, but he came just to scold me and inform me that my ex was in the infirmary after being stabbed. In his cell, an inmate attempted to offend my ex, which led to my ex getting stabbed in the stomach and the inmate breaking his spine. My brother was furious at me, telling me that I had caused all of this before storming off to his truck. I cried for days because deep down, I knew he was right. I was to blame. I kept trying to visit my ex in the infirmary, but for 4 more years, I was denied access. I tried talking to him and wrote letters, but they were all returned. Luckily, our children visited their father often, and that's how I found out my brother had put him in protective custody after the attack. Over the years, my eldest followed in his father's footsteps, going to the same college and taking the same major. He only calls his siblings and never wants to talk to me. He also only goes to his grandparents' house for holidays, avoiding mine. My other son did the same, going to the same college and not calling me either. My twins were tough on me, but they still visited their father weekly, which seemed to improve their mood. And when they got too rebellious, their uncle put them in their place. But even with all this, my brother and I barely spoke. I tried to visit his wife when they had their first child, but I was asked to leave. My mother kept me updated on what was happening in their lives, so at least I knew what was going on with them. My father still wouldn't acknowledge me. Then, in early May of this year, my kids seemed happy, and my sons came back home. I didn't know why, and I didn't care. I was just glad to have them around again after months of them avoiding me. I did everything I could to show them how sorry I was, but most of the time, they ignored me. However, they started talking to me, and that made me really happy. It felt great to have conversations with them and know what was happening in their lives. I found out my eldest was dating a woman for over a year, and my second-born was on a college track team. Even my girls started talking to me again, but it made me hate myself even more for what I had done to them. It was heartwarming to see them smiling, joking, and having dinner together again. I miss those moments so much. Towards the end of August, I was getting ready for the twins' first day of their senior year, which also happened to be their 18th birthday. I was excited about their birthday party and shared my plans with them. But then, my girls asked if we could have the party on a different day. I was confused because I thought things were getting better between us. When I asked why, one of them said, "Because Dad is throwing us a party, and I don't want you near him." That comment shocked me. I asked when their father was released, and they told me he got out at the end of April due to good behavior. I cried when I found out he was out, and it broke me even more. They were around more because he was back in their lives. They were happier and cheerful, not necessarily because we were healing, but because they had their father back. I asked where he was staying, and they said he was with my brother. I tried calling him, needing to talk, but he refused. I went over to my brother's place, holding all the letters he had returned over the years. I caught a brief glimpse of him through the door crack, shouted his name, but my brother asked me to leave. I handed him the letters and left. As I reached the driveway, I heard his voice. I turned around, and he walked towards me. I instantly started crying, went to hug him, and he handed me back the letters, coldly saying, "You forgot this?" I cried even more as I watched him walk away. I begged and pleaded for him to talk to me, but he just went back into the house. My children were standing by the door, looking at me without love in their eyes. That moment made me realize that my children were just tolerating me. Still, I want to fix things. I want to tell him how selfish I was and how much I missed him. I want to tell him I'm really sorry for ruining our relationship. I'm still trying to get through each day, despite everything. I found out from my mother that my ex-wife visited my ex 2 years ago and has been coming around to see him. I don't really care about that. I just want him to forgive me somehow. I want him to talk to me, be with me, and look at me the way he used to. I want our kids to be with us too. I just want my family back. But I know I don't deserve it. Even if by some miracle we get back together, it won't be the same. I was selfish, and I wish I could undo it all. Second story. Recently, I discovered that my ex had a flirty relationship with one of her managers at the restaurant where she works. They engaged in dirty talk while on shift, exchanged explicit compliments and photos, and even made plans to hang out. When I found out, I confronted her and asked her to stop texting the other guy and block him. However, when I checked her phone again, I realized she hadn't stopped. In less than a day, she responded to his texts on iMessage, continuing the cheating. What hurt even more was how she described getting caught by me as funny and amusing. She made me feel like a doormat, a joke, just an option for her to play around with. It seemed like everything we had together was nothing more than a toy for her to toy with. Feeling humiliated, ashamed, and shocked that she could talk about me like this to another man, I decided to take action. I posted incriminating screenshots of her conversations on her social media accounts, Instagram and Snapchat stories, because I had access to them. I also sent those screenshots to the guy she was cheating with and her boss at work, since he was another manager at the restaurant. Additionally, I sent them to her mother because she was texting this guy while I was helping her mother move to her new home. The guy responded immediately, but her boss and mother haven't replied yet. Later, she called me to apologize for the situation, but the damage was already done, and I told her about what I did to get back at her. Looking back, I think I went too far, as this kind of revenge is something I've never done before. I updated the situation, saying that her boss has seen the message I sent about her cheating at work with another restaurant manager. The boss hasn't replied yet, but now she knows what happened. Only time will tell if she'll continue working there. It seems she still has her job at the restaurant, and she's trying to manage the fallout from the social media posts. She replied to me, informing me about the developments I had previously posted about, and she made hurtful comments. The conversation turned into an ugly exchange of insults. The damage has been done, and I realize I'm acting out of spite. I've decided to stop talking to her. I plan to seek therapy and work on improving myself. I didn't expect things to escalate like this, but I appreciate all the advice I received. She never truly wanted or deserved me. I reached out to the owner and presented him with pictures of what had happened. However, he legally stated that he couldn't get involved in situations that occurred outside the restaurant, even though the screenshots clearly showed her and the manager engaging in flirting during work hours. I don't think he genuinely wants to get involved. Since we live in an at-will employment state, the employer can fire someone for any reason that isn't illegal. So, despite the discomfort it may cause for her, the owner, the general manager, and the manager she cheated with, unfortunately, she will likely keep her job. However, working there will probably be quite uncomfortable for her. Update. The guy my ex cheated on me with is a single father, co-parenting a son with another woman. I found out who the woman was and showed her all the screenshots. Unfortunately, she had seen their texts over a year ago, and she told him to stop texting her because she didn't want him hanging out with someone who didn't like the mother of their son. My ex-girlfriend knew this woman and treated her with rudeness and snobbishness. They are not together anymore, so she didn't know the exact duration of their relationship, but she knew they exchanged many texts. Surprisingly, their relationship ended too, because he was cheating on her with another woman from the same restaurant when their son was very young. It's ironic that my ex talked about not wanting to be a single mother and despising her father for cheating on her mother while she was pregnant, yet she was willing to play the role of the other woman. Third story. I was born in India. When I was 10 years old, my dad got a job in a small country town in Australia, and we moved there. It was tough because I was small, overweight, had a different skin color, spoke with an accent, and didn't understand the culture. Some crazy kids at school bullied me, and life was difficult. Fortunately, I worked hard and maintained good grades, which led me to receive a scholarship for studying science at a major university in a big city. On my first day of university tutorials, I noticed a shy and awkward-looking chubby Indian girl sitting alone. Her name was Ronnie, and she also came from a rural town. She had recently moved up here with her second cousins. We quickly connected over our shared experiences of how difficult high school was and how nice it felt to be in a diverse city. We discovered that we had many common interests and ended up joining the same university clubs and societies, such as video games, board games, Indian cultural clubs, and ballroom dancing. After spending time together for about a month, I mustered up the courage to ask her out. She was the first girl I ever asked, and to my delight, she said yes. We kept our relationship a secret and became each other's first everything, including our first kiss, love, and official partner. After a year of secretly dating, she moved into my apartment, and life was incredible. We never argued, had zero problems, shared similar hobbies and friends, were constantly attracted to each other, and felt love every day. It was like a perfect fairy tale, just two lovebirds building a life together. After dating secretly for 2 years, we decided to introduce each other to our families. My parents are conservative Muslims, but they were okay with me dating around, especially since I had chosen an Indian girl they could relate to. On the other hand, her parents were initially harsh and aggressive, but when they met me, they quickly grew fond of me. The only problem was that they wanted us to get married right away. Ronnie and I had already discussed our plans. We both wanted to pursue medical school after completing our bachelor's degrees. We also desired a family and a stable life, but we had decided to wait until after medical school to start that chapter. However, after meeting her parents and some soul-searching, I changed my mind and decided to accelerate the plan. I planned to propose to her for marriage in 2 years after we finished our bachelor's degrees. We would get married during the 5-month break after university, travel a bit, enjoy a honeymoon, and then begin medical school together as a married couple. During this time, I also decided to work on myself by losing excess weight and becoming the attractive groom she deserves. Both she and I were overweight, but our weight didn't bother us, and we found each other attractive regardless. Nevertheless, I wanted to improve myself and become the attractive man she deserves to be with. Ronnie initially supported my weight loss journey. She liked the new me, the increased energy and confidence I had gained. After a year, I had lost 30 kgs and reached my ideal body weight. I started working out and building muscle mass. However, as I transformed, Ronnie became more insecure about herself. I constantly reassured her that her weight wasn't an issue for me, but we began having more fights. She was annoyed that I cooked my meals and didn't eat out with her as much. I spent a lot of time at the gym and she felt I was too attractive for her. I kept reassuring her, but things only seemed to get worse. With 1 year to go before graduation, I discussed my plan with Ronnie's father. I asked for his consent to marry Ronnie with the understanding that we would get married after graduation to avoid wedding stress while preparing for medical school. He happily agreed. 8 months before graduation, Ronnie started acting distant and strange. I sensed something was wrong, initially attributing it to the stress of med school exams and coursework. However, after 2 weeks of coldness, I discovered a suspicious messenger message on her laptop from another guy. Ronnie had this friend who resembled the dumb, overweight brother from the show My Name is Earl. He was socially awkward, annoying, and lacked cultural awareness. He was overweight and had a persistent bad body odor. He was part of the same clubs as us, including board games, video games, and anime. While going through Ronnie's Skype messages, I discovered that she had been complaining to him about our relationship for the past year. Earlbro had expressed his love for her a few times, but she turned him down. 2 weeks ago, Ronnie and Earlbro must have cheated on me. Earlbro wanted Ronnie to break up with me, but she was saying it was a mistake and asked him to be quiet about it. I was furious when I found out, so I immediately packed my things and printed out the messages as evidence. I informed my landlord that I wouldn't be renewing my lease. I texted Ronnie that I knew about her betrayal, and we were through. I quickly moved most of my belongings, though I didn't have much since most of our stuff was hers, to a friend's house and asked my friends to protect me from Ronnie. Well, Ronnie discovered what happened and became extremely angry. It seems she rushed home and noticed that my belongings were gone. She went to our mutual friend's house and broke down crying. She attempted to contact me, but my friends deleted all her messages and so on. She claimed that her involvement with Earlbro was a drunken mistake and insisted that she never meant to hurt me. According to her, the reason she cheated was because she thought I was getting fit to find a better girlfriend and upgrade from her, which is ridiculous. She asked if we could meet again for another chance or closure, and so on. However, I made up my mind to never speak to her again, and I have successfully stuck to that decision. Ronnie's dad started bombarding my phone with calls a day after I broke up with Ronnie. He aggressively demanded an explanation for why I broke her heart. Her 2 older brothers also called and made threats, but I chose not to respond to their voicemails. Instead, I decided to send a lengthy email to both Ronnie and my parents. In the email, I poured my heart out, explaining how I had envisioned marrying Ronnie, but she had cheated. I included screenshots of her messages as evidence. I also apologized for causing a scene and for potentially affecting our family's reputation, as family status is significant in Indian culture. I expressed my need for space so that I could focus on preparing for medical school. Within an hour of sending the email, Ronnie's dad called me, expressing deep remorse. He said Ronnie was very sorry and that her actions were a mistake. He even offered to come and beg for forgiveness, and surprisingly, he also offered me money. I accepted his apology, but I made it clear that I didn't want any further contact with Ronnie or her family. I wished them all the best. A week later, Ronnie's family came down to our city. They took her back to their hometown and withdrew her from her courses. As a result, she couldn't graduate on time or apply for medical school. She returned 1 year later to complete her course, but unfortunately, she failed. Subsequently, she spent a year living at home and remained unemployed before finally finding a retail job. During this time, she gained a significant amount of weight, and her appearance changed dramatically. News of Ronnie's cheating spread within the Indian community, leading to her family being ostracized. Now, Ronnie is dealing with severe depression, and her family resents her for tarnishing their reputation within the Indian community. I left for med school in another state, and I got in touch with several Indian parents who wanted me to tutor their kids. One girl I tutored, Amina, amazed me. She was studying science and aspired to become a doctor. She was not only physically attractive, but also had a beautiful personality. Her smile could brighten up any room, and most importantly, she had a kind and caring soul. She actively participated in her community and volunteered not just to enhance her chances of getting into med school, but because she genuinely cared about helping others. After tutoring her for a year, I realized I was in love with her. I mustered the courage to ask her out, but she declined. Amina admitted that she liked me too, but she was religious and preferred an arranged marriage according to Islamic law. Although we weren't officially dating, I knew she was the girl of my dreams, so I talked to my parents about her. Our parents then arranged our marriage, with the understanding that we would be engaged for 2 years until we both completed our respective programs. During this time, we started dating as fiancés, which may seem a bit unconventional. Years ago, Ronnie and I created a bucket list of romantic activities we planned to do as a couple. Amina discovered the list, and after discussing it with her, she liked the idea and wanted us to complete the activities with some changes. Our goal was to finish the list before our wedding. As we completed each activity, Amina took photos and made a scrapbook to preserve our memories, such as hiking a mountain, salsa dancing, visiting the Great Barrier Reef, Rome, Paris, etc. A few months before our scheduled wedding, Amina shared our scrapbook on Facebook. Unfortunately, Ronnie somehow found access to it and sent Amina a harsh message, accusing her of stealing her idea. In response, Amina fired back with a fierce message defending herself and expressing how terrible Ronnie was. The whole situation escalated, and it seems the news of my upcoming wedding pushed Ronnie to the brink. She made threats about taking her own life, and as a result, she had to spend 3 weeks in a mental health ward. This incident caused a major scandal within our Indian community, and it happened 3 years ago. I have been married to Amina for 2 years now, and everything has been wonderful. She is currently in med school, and I am working as a junior doctor. We are now trying to have a baby. Last Sunday, my father received a call from one of his friends in another city who was arranging a marriage for his son. Ronnie's parents had proposed a match, and they contacted my dad to gather some information about Ronnie before introducing her to their son. My dad forwarded the initial email I wrote to this person and then called him to share Ronnie's story of cheating, dropping out of university, and dealing with depression. As a result, the guy quickly changed his mind and canceled the arranged marriage. He was grateful for my dad's advice and promised to warn others in his community about Ronnie's past. In the end, I didn't even have to confront Ronnie to seek revenge. Karma took care of it all, delivering justice on a silver platter. I now have a beautiful wife and a job I enjoy, while Ronnie's life is filled with misery and self-destruction. It all began with my desire to lose weight before proposing to her, and though it might not be considered pro-revenge, I find some satisfaction in the outcome. Perhaps those who are struggling with love might find some comfort or joy in reading this and seeing karma at work. I'm just passing on the message of karma.